Hi, everyone. So in this video, we're going to do something a little bit different and look at the Perseus story from Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles, right? This book of Greek myths, right? It's a really good companion if you've been studying Latin for a little bit, maybe around Latin 2 or so, 2 or 3, depending on your school. But it's a really great story. It's pretty straightforward. Ritchie's done a great job of simplifying the story into Latin that you can understand without too much vocab help. But again, if you want, the best source I can tell you about is Dr. Jeffrey Stedman, whose website I'll link in this video too. He did a great job of taking this story and putting vocabulary and grammar help in it. There's a lot of different places you can get the story, but I think his is particularly good with helping you with the vocab and the grammar, things like that. But we're going to dive into it in this series and try to make some sense of it, because I know the Ritchie's Fabulae have been used a lot in different high school settings, perhaps even college, but I know at least in my classroom we use it a lot. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool to do some Latin that's, quote, real Latin, if you will, telling different stories and just mixing it up a little bit from the traditional textbooks. So as we dive in, I want to start by thinking about who is Perseus. Who was this legendary Greek hero? So he's the founder of the city of Mycenae, right, which is a great bit of history you can look at, Greek history. I'd recommend you look it up. He's the legendary founder, the son of Zeus and Danae, right? His mom is mortal. His father is Zeus, so he's what we call a demigod, this sort of half mortal, half immortal, right? He has a grandfather named Acrisius, who's the king of Argos, and he's going to play a pretty big role in this story as we go. So the reason he plays a role is it's foretold in an oracle that Perseus would kill Acrisius, and you're going to see kind of what happens that drives the storyline in this first part of Ritchie's Fabulae. He's also Perseus famous for slaying Medusa, the Gorgon, also the sea monster of Poseidon, and he rescues and marries Andromeda, which you're all going to see in this story. But there's a ton you could learn about Perseus. I'd highly recommend you look him up, do a search, read a little bit about him. He's a really awesome story and a really great way to dive into Greek mythology, even though what he's doing, may or may not agree with it. But it's still a great story, and I think Ritchie does a good job of bringing the story to life through this Latin. So let's take a look. Part 1 is called the Ark. And again, I'd highly recommend that before you do anything else, you dive in and just read this story out loud, right? Read it aloud, try to catch the different tenses of verbs, the different noun endings, just the flow of the story. I can't recommend that enough. It'll help you with your translation when you kind of hear everything aloud once, and it'll help you memorize the words too. So this is part 1, how it goes. Haec narantor a poetis de Persio. Perseus filius erat Iovis, maximi deorum, avus eos Acrisius appellebator. Acrisius volebat Persium nepotem suum necare, nam propter oraculum puerum timebat. Comprehendit igitur Persium ad hoc infantem, et cum matre in arca lignea inclusit. Tum arcam ipsam in mare coniecit. Danae Persiae mater, magna per terita est, tempestas and in magna mare turbabat. Perseus autem in sinu matris dormiebat. So that's the story, right? If you were to read it out loud, that's the story. And again, if you know the vocab, you're going to catch a lot of the different words, and hopefully it helps you. But I'd always encourage you to start by reading the story aloud. So now that you've heard the story with my terrible pronunciation, I'm sure a bunch of you out there can do it better than me. But now that you've read the story and heard it, again, I'd encourage you to do it on your own. Let's start looking at it line by line. So it starts with haec narantor a poetis de Persio. These things, right? Haec is neuter plural. It's a substantive. So these things are told by the poets about Perseus. And then it keeps going. It says Perseus was the son of Jove, Jupiter, right? Filius erat Iovis. He was the son of Jupiter. Maximi deorum, the greatest of the gods, right? And then it says avus eos, his grandfather, was called appellebator Acrisius, right? Was called Acrisius. That's his grandfather. Acrisius volebat Persium nepotem suum necare. So you're saying Acrisius volebat wanted to kill necare, right? To kill his own grandson, Perseus, right? Nepotem suum, his own grandson, Perseus. So he wanted to kill him. Why? It's about to explain. Because, nam, propter oraculum puerum timebat, on account of an oracle, right? So because of an oracle you can think of, but on account of an oracle, timebat, he was afraid or he feared puerum, the boy. right? So he gets wind of an oracle saying, you should be afraid of your grandson. He's going to kill you at some point. So because of this, he wants to kill Perseus before Perseus can kill him. That's the backstory. So comprehend it. He seized, or he grabbed Perseus. Igator means therefore, right? So therefore he grabbed Perseus, still an infantem, still a baby, right? An infant. And Kumatre, with his mother, inclusit, he shut him in into an arca lignea, inside a wooden ark, you could say. And by ark, it really means like a box or a chest is kind of one way to think of it. So he stuffs them into a wooden box, right? That's his way of solving this problem. Then what does he do? Tomb. So then he threw, cognac, right? He threw the ark itself in mare, into the sea. So he decides, I'm going to get rid of this problem. I'm going to throw it into the sea. The backstory here is you're not supposed to be killing your own family members, right? In Greek mythology, you're not supposed to do that. And the oracle had told him, hey, Perseus is going to kill you. The oracle's never wrong, right? In these myths, the oracle's very rarely, if ever, wrong. So Acrisius knows he can't go against the oracle, so he throws him in the ocean. And in his mind, he's like, if the sea kills him, that wasn't me. I didn't do it. The sea did it, right? He thinks he's kind of finessing his way around this oracle and finding a workaround. We're going to see how that works out for him. Danae, right? The mother of Perseus, Perseae mater, right? The mother of Perseus. Terita est magnoper, right? She was very frightened. Okay, so terita est, terrified or frightened, right? So she was very frightened by all of this, right? And again, this is just sort of a normal passive, past tense, perfect passive, right? She was frightened, you could say. Tempestas enim magna mare turbabat, right? She's worried because the tempestas, the storm, turbabat, was shaking or was disturbing, is the English derivative you get from this, right? The storm was shaking everything around, right? And it's a magna tempestas. It's a great storm. And again, tempestas here is feminine, nominative, singular. Don't get thrown off by the as ending. It's going with magna, right? So it was rocking about, on the ocean, right? In the sea. So it's throwing the sea all around, okay? Perseus, however, dormiebat, he was sleeping in sinu matris, right? In sinu means like in the bosom or in the arms, right? So in the arms of his mother. So Perseus isn't really thrown off by any of this. He's fine. He's asleep, okay? So this is our first hint that there's something really special about Perseus, right? That he's a demigod. So even though all this chaos is happening around him, he's still asleep. He's not bothered by it. Okay, so that's the translation of this story. It's nothing too crazy, nothing you can't handle. If you've done a little bit of Latin, you'll recognize the imperfect tense. There's a little bit of passive voice involved, but overall, nothing too crazy. So again, I would recommend you go back, you look through all the vocab, make sure you know what all the words mean, read it to yourself, right? Read it aloud. That way you can work on your pronunciation and sort of listening skills, and then try to put it all together. And if you get stuck, I would recommend, again, that you either watch this video or find a commentary. I mentioned Dr. Stedman has a great one, but there's a bunch out there of people who've translated the story. Compare your translation against either mine or one of the ones you can find online. And if you're pretty close, it means you're on the right track and you're doing just fine. But keep working at it. It's a good story. And this is just part one, but you'll be fine the more you work at it.